Hey y'all, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Y'all, if you watch my first video, you'll know that I have been studying the Bible for myself and synthesizing for myself with supported things, different YouTube channels, videos, supported readings, and things of that nature. But I'm truly, being the adult that I am, actually diving into the Word and studying the Word and synthesizing it for myself. And so I find myself really looking at all of the stuff in the word to be it's very interesting. It's some real drama that was going on back in the day, but nonetheless, it is the word. And the word is here to teach us and to support our faith and our walk with the Lord and to be able to fight off attacks of the enemy in our lives with the use of the word. One of the stories that were just really stood out to me that I just had to share and talk about is in Numbers chapter 14. And I have my Bible sitting here in front of me. I know you can't see it, but I have my Bible sitting here in front of me. And Numbers 14 talks about the rebellion against Moses and Aaron. And the 12 spies, there were 12 spies that were sent into Canaan to go and essentially look at the land and see how they can overtake Canaan and move into their promised land. When the 12 spies went in, they saw that Canaan was very fruitful. There was a lot of food and resources there. There was more than just the manna, there was meat. We talked about in a previous chapter how the Israelites in the wilderness that they weren't happy with just the manna, but they wanted meat. And because they were unappreciative, the Lord did show them the reason that they should be appreciative of the manna. But nonetheless, chapter 14, they realized that Canaan was very full and fruitful, and there was food, there were resources, but there were also people there. And those 12 spies felt as though, let me rephrase that, 10 of the 12 spies felt like they could not go into the land of Canaan and overtake that land and enter the promised land. And it just stood out to me to be so interesting because so quickly, this was the time that God ordained for them to go into the land of Canaan and to be there of supporting them because they were obedient to him and to allow them to enter into that promised land, right? But they did not take that opportunity. They were not obedient. They were fearful, and that fear caused them to not enter into the land of Canaan at that time. But what really stood out to me in this is that this was the same God, right? The same God that sent them to Canaan is the same God that had worked so many miracles up until that point for them. And so, how quickly they had forgotten how good God had been to them, to their parents, to their grandparents. And they were so quick to deny what God had told them he was going to do in supporting them to enter in the land of Canaan. Now, as we're looking at this, like I said, I got my Bible here in front of me, but as we're looking at this, I just want to talk about some of the things that God had already done for them, the miracles that God had already worked in their lives that they had so easily forgotten about. So, their lack of faith at the Red Sea. When God allowed Moses to part that Red Sea, the people were in such awe because of the miracle that they had saw in front of them. They couldn't believe it, but they took advantage of it. That was a miracle that God had already performed for the Israelites, delivering them from Egypt and from being under slavery under Pharaoh. There was even a point in the Bible where it talks about the people finding an idol to worship because they didn't think that God was going to do what he said that he was going to do. And in today's time, I look at that as when we're waiting on God and we're saying, God, you promised me this. God, I'm tired. God, I'm going through this. God, I need this. God. And then we're so quick to go find something else to support what we want, how we want it, when that was not God's plan for us. God wants us to rely on Him. God wants us to depend on Him. God does not want us seeking worldly, and I'm not talking about when people need help and resources with things like that. You can go to different organizations and get help. Maybe it be rental assistance, utility assistance, and things of that nature. That's not what I'm talking about because those things are there for use. But I'm speaking of things like you may not see how God is moving in your life. So, because you don't see how God is going to provide you an extra $500 a month that you need, instead of you going to do something that God would appreciate you doing, or God would say, you're listening to me, you're hearing me, you decide to do something that may not be necessarily moral, may not be necessarily of God, may not reflect truly trusting God. And so I share this message because God works a lot of miracles in our lives. And sometimes, like even right now, some things you may be going through, it may be in relationships, it may be financial, it may be with health, it may be with your job, with your children, your spouse, your mother, father. But when we're going through things, it's important to remember that God is the source. God is the source. And so there are things that we go through that God has already worked out, and He's just waiting for us to get to that point to see how He's worked it out. But if you're not obedient to the Lord, you may not get to the point that you see how it worked out, or you may get to the point that you see how it worked out, but it could have been so much better had you been obedient during that time between you not knowing and you knowing. Okay. And so the number one thing that the enemy does to affect us is to take our mental clarity, to obstruct how we're able to hear God and communicate with God, and to essentially break down our faith, to where it's very little. Knowing that what strengthens God in our lives actively so we can see, because He's always there. But what strengthens that is our faith. What activates God's glory to where we can see it and where it comes quicker is our faith in the Lord. There are times that God has protected you, is protecting you now. It may be things that you never see, that you never know of, that you never realize, but God was protecting you the whole time. God was protecting your child or your children the whole time, or your mother, your father the whole time, and you didn't even know it. I remember it was a time last year, 2024, that a miracle had happened in my life and I didn't even know it. I'm talking about a miracle, a lifetime miracle happened in my life and I didn't even know it. I didn't know it until this year, maybe 2 to 3 weeks ago. And when I reflect on that, because I'm one that sits and reflects and synthesizes on everything. And when I reflect on that miracle that happened, it happened last year, 2024 in August. I didn't find out about it until this year, January, the second or third week in January. And so I realized that it wasn't time for me to know of that miracle last year when it happened, because the information came at a time that I had recently been laid off from my last job. And I wasn't questioning God because I had already been through some things in life and experiences, which you can see in my first video that I posted if you want to go back and look at that. But I had already been through some things to know that I'm in a season that's ongoing where I will trust God as long as He gives me breath and I wake up on this earth. And so when the information of the miracle came to my attention, it came at a time after I was laid off and allowed me, or served rather, as a reminder to me. I felt like it was just a clear message from God saying, "Trust me. I got you. Don't worry. I got you." And I feel like I'm sharing this because it's something, so whoever this message is for today, you know if this message is for you, God got you. God got you. There's some things that you sitting up worried about, or that you have even worried about in the past and you haven't worried about in a while, but it still might be in the back of your mind, whatever that is. And God is saying, "Trust me, I got you." The miracle that I experienced was something that I had thought about for a long time, but never had an idea of how, when, or any of the logistics of it. And so I share this to say that there are miracles that God has waiting for you at different points of your life. And the way that you choose to have faith in the Lord, to trust in the Lord, to be obedient to what He is telling you is what really is going to activate you aligning with those miracles in your life. And so I don't know what it is that you may be going through today, but what I do know is there are miracles that have happened in the past that you may not know about, but the ones that you can identify, sit in it, think about it, write it down on paper, and really break that thing apart so you can see and analyze how God was working in your life at that time. And then see what was going on before that time that led to that and that miracle. So that way you can apply those methods, principles, and synthesis to what is going on now and see if there's any patterns. See if there's things that are matching up between what you're desiring, between what you know God has promised you, what you've been working towards, what you've been feeling, what you've been asking God to do in your life, and just compare getting to the miracle, the last miracle that you're aware of, getting to that miracle and what that looked like and all the things that led to it, the emotions, the feelings, the interactions that led to it. And then on this end, the miracles that you are waiting for. And what are the things that you can break down and synthesize that have led to you desiring that miracle? And what are the things that you can do differently or better, or being more in the word, being more connected to the Lord, trusting Him, letting Him lead you, being obedient, that can lead you to that miracle and have you more prepared for that miracle when it comes. Or miracles. The Lord has worked more than one miracle in my life. In both of the last two miracles of my life, I consider to be lifetime blessings. That's just the best way I can explain it without going into too much detail, just lifetime blessings. And so I share this message today with you all just to be a reminder that God will never leave you nor forsake you. And He is always working things out for your good, even when it seems like you don't know how. You don't know in what way. You don't know to what capacity. You don't know how much longer you can go. You don't know how much longer you can do what you're doing the way you're doing it, and to survive and to maintain and trust God. But also, while you're trusting God, be building a relationship with Him. If you already have a relationship built with Him, maintain that. Go deeper into that. Some people are very strong in the Lord, in their relationship with the Lord. So you may be already praying 2 hours a day. And I know we all have things that we do, other things that we're responsible for in our day to day lives. And so 2 hours a day is a very good timing to connect with the Lord and be with the Lord and things like that. So you may already be at that point. There's some people that spend more than 2 hours a day, but if you can just get 5 minutes a day just alone with the Lord, if that's all you can squeeze out, do that, because sometimes what God is waiting for, depending on who I'm talking to here, He's waiting for you to come to Him. He's waiting for you to trust Him. He's waiting for you to realize that He is your source. And once you realize that and begin to act on it and treat the Lord like He is who He is, Watch and see what happens. Watch and see how your life changes. Watch and see how you grow and develop. Watch and see how things begin to change in a way that you can't even begin to understand. I remember before I was laid off from my last job, maybe about 1 to 2 months before, about 2 weeks went by that I was just in a mode of peace. It was deep peace. And there was nothing going on in my life at that time that was out of the normal, but there was this deep peace. And I talked to my aunt about it and I was like, this is just different. I've never felt anything like this before. It's just a deep peace. And it's just out of nowhere. And it hit me that, oh my goodness, this is the peace that surpasses all understanding. And never before that in my life had I experienced peace, some good old peace with some good old blessings. But at that time in my life, I'd never experienced a peace so peaceful. That's the best way I can explain it. A peace that was so peaceful. It would be equivalent to the aroma that God seeks in the Bible that is so pleasing to him. That's the only equivalent that I can even think of right now to explain the peace that surpasses all understanding. And it just really amazed me that I'd never felt that kind of peace before, but it felt so good. And it came at a time that God knew within a couple of months I was going to be laid off. And at the time I was experiencing that peace, I was saying, God, what is this for? What is this coming from? What is this to show me? What are you telling me with this? And after I was laid off, I could have went into this panic and not trusting God and feeling like, woe is me and why me? And Lord, I'm tired. I could have went that route, but I didn't. I didn't because I remembered that peace. I remembered that peace. And that peace is still sustaining me today because that was a reminder from the Lord letting me know that, baby, I'm taking care of you. I'm looking out for you. I got you, right? And that is what God is telling you today. He's looking out for you. He's got you. He's there for you. Trust him, and he will give you a peace that surpasses all understanding. I hope this message has given you some faith and encouragement today, and I look forward to seeing you all and chatting again in the next video. Love y'all.